St. Bridget is, as a Catholic saint, is a patron saint of brewers and storytellers. So, it's an obvious link for a brewery.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beer Rep Chats With. Today I am joined by Sean from Brid's Cross. Sean, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thanks for inviting me on.
Let's kick things off with the story behind Brid's Cross. When and how did the brewery come to life?
Okay, so the brewery kind of nearly got started in 2020. I'd had issues at work, and I very nearly in the summer of 2020 very nearly bought a pub with the idea of running it as a brew pub. And then obviously with what happened, sorry, not in 2020, in 2019, and then obviously in 2020 we had lockdown. So I was kind of quite glad that I'd dodged that bullet, not kind of launching the brewery as a brew pub just then. It wouldn't have worked out so well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it was in sort of over Christmas 2021, talking to one of my kids, and he was saying, "Oh, look, you should do this, Dad. You should give it a go." And my first response was, "Well, I don't know if I've got the, I'd need capital to get started." And then it occurred to me that I'd relatively recently separated and sold a family home and had all the equity from my life's work sitting in the bank, and thought, well, instead of buying a house, I could start a brewery. So yes,
it's a rational decision.
Yeah, it was quite a big one, and I sort of talked to the kids about it and said, "Look, this could be a great way of blowing your inheritance." And all three of my kids said, "Look, go for it." They're very supportive and encouraging. And
that's
so,
really nice.
Yeah, then sort of through 2022, kind of gradually, started thinking about business planning and all of this sort of thing. Incorporated the business in it would have been October of 2022. Started off contract brewing, and had my first commercial beer release in sort of August of 2023. So now just coming up, we're planning at the moment for the brewery's second birthday party. It's been a journey.
So what's the whole meaning and the inspiration behind the name Brid's Cross?
Okay, so
tell us a bit more.
Yeah. So the logo is a St. Bridget's cross. Brid is an old sort of Irish variant spelling of a Celtic goddess that became St. Bridget. St. Bridget is, as a Catholic saint, is a patron saint of brewers and storytellers. So it's an obvious link for a brewery, and all of my beer names are kind of based on folk tales, or pretty much all. There's one or two exceptions. So based on folk tales, mythology, that kind of thing. So there's a link between the concept of the brewery and the beer name, the brewery name, and the brewery logo.
Yeah, it's very, very unique. Can you tell us a bit about one of the folk tales that are tied into one of your beers? I suppose the obvious one to talk about is what is really my flagship beer. It's what I brew and sell more of than anything else, which is Ash and Elm, and that was my first commercial release. So Ash and Elm is basically the Viking version of the story of Adam and Eve. So you've got Odin and his brother gods walking along the shoreline, and they see these two fallen trees, an ash tree and an elm tree, and they use those to fashion the first man and first woman.
Okay. So yeah, that's the story behind that beer, and obviously it's an origin story. It was my first commercial release, and it's the beer that I sell more than anything else, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, it's nice to have something unique to tie in with the beers that you release and stuff, and it's quite niche. So you were homebrewing, obviously, before launching Brid's Cross. Was you already homebrewing before, or did you
take a different path into beer?
So my first foray into home brewing was with my chemistry teacher at school in general studies, teaching us how to brew. When I was sort of 17, 18 years old. And frankly,
why don't we get that in schools these days?
No, I don't know that you'd be allowed to do that nowadays. But it'd
be much more interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Interestingly, another teacher there taught me how to brew mead as well. But I don't do that commercially. Yeah, so that was my very first foray into home brewing. And to be honest, I was not a great home brewer at the age of 18. I did that for a few years. And then, after university and getting a job and being able to afford to buy better beer than I could brew myself, like the home brewing kind of, I just stopped doing it for quite a while. But then it was about 10 years ago or so now, I guess. My eldest son took me on a brewery tour at Adnams. I'm a Suffolk boy, so Adnams is my kind of local home brewery, as it were.
Done the tour myself. Really beautiful.
That kind of reinvigorated my interest in brewing. And at about the same time, a friend of mine got a book called the 1 Gallon Homebrew Book, which kind of like was a bit of a revelation because nobody brews 1 gallon. It's kind of it's a bit crazy. It's totally time inefficient. But I just thought, actually, I could do that, and it's it's a kind of low barrier to entry. Like virtually everything that I needed to brew 1 gallon was stuff that I had in the kitchen anyway.
Yeah,
so I started brewing then. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pots and pans and, things like that. Started brewing all grain about 10 years ago. And the thing that was actually really good about the really small batch brewing was that it meant I was brewing sort of about once a fortnight and had lots and lots of opportunities to, to learn techniques, which are fundamentally the same techniques I use now on a commercial scale. So to kind of refine technique and to, experiment with recipes and all that kind of thing. Like originally I was brewing other people's recipes, but fairly quickly started kind of creating my own beer recipes. And because I was brewing such small batches, I had lots and lots of like opportunities to try different things, which was really good learning.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my home brewing, I'm brewing into a 19-litre corny keg, and I never get through a whole corny keg on my own. It's me and my partner. So it's kind of, doing 1 gallon batches. I think we was talking to the malt miller, and they do quite a lot of small batch recipes.
Yeah.
Similar scale to 1 gallon, which you was doing. But I guess it's easier to, you haven't got much beer at the end of it. You can drink them, start a new beer style, and then just continue to do, like you said, as many recipes as you want once every 2 weeks or something. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy because it takes, it used to take me, it probably took me about, I don't know, I think about 5 hours to do a 1 gallon brew day, and it doesn't, and now it takes me maybe 8 hours to do a 1,200 litre brew day. So in terms of like the amount of time it takes and then how much beer you produce, it's totally crazy. But it was a good learning experience as a brewer, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So obviously you mentioned Adnams, but were there any other breweries or beer styles in your early brewing days that influenced, what sort of beers you brew for Brid Cross?
Oh dear, do I dare to mention it? I guess one of the things that that was a useful tool and something that I got quite a bit of sort of inspiration and learning from was the Scottish brewery, which shall not be named, released a PDF of homebrew scale versions of all of their beer recipes, basically.
Is there a hint? Woof woof?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. And I brewed a few of those recipes, and I also kind of used them as inspiration. And I guess that was it. So I used to be quite good friends with, haven't spoken to for a while, but with with Ruth Mitchell, who did worked for Adnams at the time, and has since worked for a number of breweries, including Elusive most recently. And she was a real influence in terms of introducing me to different beers. I think she introduced me to Brewdog initially. She also, convinced me to buy my first ever kind of craft keg beer, because I was very much a cask real ale drinker. For right from when I started drinking at 18 or thereabouts. But yeah, so she persuaded me to buy to have a pint of Lagunitas IPA. That was my sort of first foray into kind of modern craft beer, as it were. Yeah. So
was it down Weatherspoons? Was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Weatherspoons. It was in I can't remember the name of the pub now, but it's a pub in London. Quite a few years ago now. So that was an influence. And but like I said, most of my life, I was a cask drinker, and one of the beers that kind of really kind of woke me up at a fairly young age to the breadth of different beer that was available was Malden's Blackadder, which was champion beer of Britain, I think, in 1986. And I drank it about then, and that was the first time I'd probably drunk anything that wasn't Adnams or Green King. So that was a kind of started me on a journey of discovery, I guess, at quite a young age.
Yeah, definitely. I was a cask ale drinker myself back in the day before I ventured into keg beer, and it was only when really the boom of IPAs came from America, them sort of recipes, that I really got into kegged beer. But I've always been a big fan of cask, and still am. And we're getting so many good styles of cask beers coming out. We're getting them hazy keg style beers getting put into casks, and they're tasting absolutely amazing. As well as always, the traditional style cask beers are still great as well. So, would you like lean more towards traditional styles or kind of modern interpretations, or do you like a balance of two?
I do. I like to, kind of do a bit of both, really. I mean, most of what I produce is cask beer. There are a lot more free cask lines around than free keg lines. So I do, a lot more cask. I have started contract kegging, in sort of this last year. So I'm starting to do a bit more keg beer, and the Ashenelm that I mentioned earlier, I've got a permanent keg line for that at a pub, just here in Rochdale. So I do a bit of keg, and I do best bitters, ESBs, dry stouts, Irish stout. So I do those sort of traditional style beers, but then I also, West Coast IPA, red IPA. So I do, kind of more sort of modern style, and like you say, hazy pale. So the beer that we did for International Women's Day, Collaboration Brew Day earlier this year, we did a hazy pale, which we did in cask, and went really, really well. So kind of, I like, we sort of say we try to do the best of sort of, modern and traditional styles.
Yeah, it's a nice little balance of both. Get both audiences.
Yeah.
Is there like a particular hop malt or yeast that you love working with all the time, and you always find using it in most of your recipes?
Yeast is an interesting one. So I've got two yeasts that I tend to use for nearly all the beers that I do. But it was interesting at the Great British Beer Festival yesterday. Like they in their discovery section, I don't know if you tried it out.
I was there.
But 4 beers, basically the same beer, same malt and hops brewed with different yeasts, and the difference in flavors was quite interesting. So that's something that I'm interested in kind of leaning into a bit going forward. I like to use British hops, the modern British hops when I can. I do use American New World hops as well, like New Zealand and that kind of thing. But I do like to use British hops. In a traditional British beer, I love Bramling Cross, but I also really like some of the modern British hops, Olicana, Jester, Harlequin, those sorts of things. And we used two hops in the in the Pirate Queen beer that I mentioned earlier. That was the Women's Day beer. We used two hops that only have numbers. There's CF162 and CF169. So interesting to use some of those sorts of hops as well. For something
experimental
different.
Ones, yeah. Yeah, I remember using the HBC 586, which is now named as Crush. At a homebrewing level when that first came out, was HBC 586, and very, very tropical fruity hop. And yes, that's now Crush. Obviously, it's people coming out and it's been used quite a lot. But yeah, I was at the taste and discovery, and I did the 4 different tastes of the different yeasts. I really liked the Kvaik one, which brought out quite a lot of stone flavors in the beer. I thought that was a really nice yeast strain. So I'll be keeping an eye on that yeast strain for some home brewing if I ever get to do it again at some point. So what would you say is your favourite part of the brewing process, and what's the most challenging for you?
The most challenging is sales, definitely for various reasons. The favourite part of it for me is is seeing my beer on the bar in a pub, getting to drink it, it's through a sparkler, through a beer engine, and getting feedback from people, and especially sometimes, like, you get people that don't necessarily know that I've brewed the beer, and so you get a kind of real honest feedback from them. But yeah, getting that appreciation from people. I also do artisan markets at weekends. So I do contract canning as well. And so sell canned beer on markets, and giving people samples and getting the reaction of people saying, yeah, this is really good. Really appreciating it. So that, I think that's definitely the thing that I like the most, seeing the appreciation from drinkers.
It's a great feeling, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So you say you get your beers into quite a few local independent pubs in Rochdale. How important is your local community to what you do at Breed's Cross?
It's really important, because it is that opportunity to get direct feedback. That I got a good working relationship with the Bourne in Rochdale, which is where we're having our second birthday party. Had the first birthday party there last year. So that's a really good one. It's a great little pub. So that's really important. Like I said, the artisan market. So face to face with people that come back and buy more beer every month, in sort of 4s and 8s and 12s, buying a significant amount of beer every month, and it's become part of their sort of monthly calendar to come to the Breeze Cross store when the market's in their town, and that's really great. And just trying to spread it more widely as well. Local community is definitely important, but relatively recently, a few months ago, I got onto Cellar, so now have national distribution for Cask and Keg, so starting to get the beer out more widely as well. It's really good to get that and get people. I had some beer that went down to a pub in London a month or so ago, and sort of they'd put a story out on Instagram, new beer from a new brewery, and then sort of an hour later I got another notification from the same pub account, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it was a message from the bar manager, just saying this beer is absolutely divine, I think, or superb, or I can't remember exactly what the word was, but yeah, and having this sort of loving kind of messages going backwards and forwards for an hour. So getting that kind of direct communication, like the first post was just, that's just standard. He's just putting out, this is the new beer in the pub. The second one, that was like, he didn't need to do that.
Yeah,
so
that's more personal.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah,
local community is definitely important, but personal connection with with customers, pub customers and actual drinkers, is really important to me as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's good. I think Cellar. I use Cellar as well, obviously, to get the beers for the beer rep, and it's a good platform for smaller breweries and to get their beers sold across the UK, because it's used a lot, obviously, like by independent pub companies, pub businesses, and yeah, it's a great way to showcase your beers on a bigger platform, on a wider scale across the UK. So yeah, it's a good source there. You don't have a tap room or anything yourself, do you, at the moment?
Not as such. We are having an open weekend at the brewery on the bank holiday weekend this month. So anybody that's near to Rochdale, if assuming this goes out before the bank holiday weekend in August, we will be opening the brewery. I actually I cuckoo brew with another brewer at the moment. So it's myself at Breed's Cross and Ken at Serious Brewing, and we'll both be serving our beers there. And it's a bit of I guess it's a bit of an experiment just to see how it goes, and whether it's something we'll do, as a kind of once a month pop up going forwards.
Yeah,
but we don't have a permanent tap room there, no.
Cool. What do you think, some of the biggest challenges that you faced starting, Breed's Cross? Was it mainly access to market, or was it just, building up from homebrewing scale to a bigger scale to commercial?
Yeah, I think access to market and and selling beer as a completely new brewery that was unknown, and that was definitely a challenge for a while. And obviously, I'm in Rochdale and Greater Manchester. There are a lot of really great breweries in the Greater Manchester area, and there's quite a few breweries that are also really very, very good breweries that possibly aren't as well known, like further afield. Obviously, Track, Cloudwater, Sure Shot, the likes of those. But there's a whole load of other really good breweries in the area that aren't necessarily known across the country. So yeah, actually getting on the bar, when you're a complete newcomer to the scene, was challenging. But I'm glad to say that generally speaking, when I do get on the bar, the beer sells well, and I generally get repeat custom. So Port Street in Manchester is one that orders from me fairly regularly. So that's a great kind of a great sales account to have. As a really well respected pub, that they know their beer and their customers know good beer. So to be able to sell into there regularly is is kind of testament to the fact that I'm doing something right. But it's taken a while, and there are other pubs that I'd like to be selling into into sort of the Manchester area that I haven't managed to sell to yet, because there is just there's just a lot of competition.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of competition. How do you feel about the whole access to market situation for independent breweries? What do you feel needs to be done on a realistic level to help independent breweries get into probably mostly tied pubs, I would say, rather than independent ones?
Yeah. I think anything that can be done, that kind of frees up, access to independent breweries. And like you say, you've got the tied pubs, whether that be the owned by the big pub companies, or or like they're the bigger kind of regional level breweries that often they are independent, but they're a completely different scale to a brewery like myself, which is just me. So anything that can be done that can free up access to those sorts of some of those lines would be really, really good. And government is looking at it at the moment. So we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, the more access, the better. Yeah,
they're trailing something in Scotland at the moment, aren't they? Where the tenants can apply for a guest line inside the pub to have at least one guest line, I think it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that can roll out to the UK and Wales. I think maybe 20% would be more favourable. 20% of the draft lines, including cask, would be a benefit. Would be more beneficial than just at least one line.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think like anything is better than nothing. And yeah, there are
100%.
So many pubs that they're just there's just no access whatsoever. But there's other things as well. In terms of like the price point that we can sell at, as a small brewery compared to the big pub company or the big kind of multinational brewers have these economies of scale that they can sell beer at a price that we can't compete with. And so it's needing to convince publicans and drinkers that they need to pay what beer is worth. Yeah.
Do you think customers are becoming more aware of who's like truly independent and a bit more aware of how much brewing a beer for a small independent really does cost and how much it costs them? Obviously, the overheads like electricity, business rates.
I don't know. I think there are probably some. There's probably a section of the market where people are becoming more aware, and obviously, like Seaver's Indie Beer campaign helps with that.
So it does, yeah.
And but I think there's still an awful lot of people who, for example, have got no idea that Beavertown is owned by Heineken. And like those of us that are kind of like in the beer bubble, that's like, how can people not know that? But actually, people just don't. So there's a lot of people that haven't got that awareness.
Yeah, the average day drinker is not going to know anything like that, as you said. So what can we expect from Breed's Cross in the near future? Any exciting beer releases or collaborations coming up?
So I've got a new beer that's coming out for the birthday bash. I did a homebrew competition as part of the sort of preparations for the second birthday bash. I had Matt Curtis joining me on the judging panel with that, and also the owner of the Baum here in Rochdale. And the winning beer was a Kolsch style beer, brewed.
I love a Kolsch.
Yeah, brewed by a guy called Matt Durrant from Sutton in Ashfield, which is sort of Nottingham kind of way. So that was a winning beer. Created a little bit of a headache because obviously, as a beer that requires lagering, it became a bit of a tight squeeze to get it brewed in time. Matt came up and had a brew day with me. So his sort of first commercial scale brew day, which he found very interesting. And that beer is being released in cask, keg, and can on the second birthday, on the 22nd of August. So we've got that coming up. I've got a collaboration in the pipeline with a kind of a folktale podcast. Not sure about dates for that at the moment, but yes, that's should be being brewed sometime either later this month or in September. So that's something to look forward to as well. But we're kind of not saying too much about that just yet. So that's the sort of the two. The sort of two new beers that are coming up. Compared to some breweries, I'm not really very prolific in terms of new beers. One of the things about the brewery is that I commission original artwork for every new beer that I produce. So as a very small scale brewery,
that's quite a significant outlay, and so I don't bring out new beers super often, because I do have to, I have to brew the same beer repeatedly in order to kind of get value for money out of the expenditure on the artwork. But I do think, the artwork is a big part of the brand identity, and we get a lot of love for the artwork on our pump clips and our can labels. So yeah, it's I'm really pleased with the guy that we work with on that. But for sort of just simple economic reasons, it does limit how often I bring out a new beer.
Well, yeah, because you have to pay for the artwork in advance, I'm guessing. So if you're doing 10 new beers a month, that's 10 new commissioned pieces of artwork, and that ends up being a big expenditure for you. Yeah. So we're gonna finish off the chat, Sean, with a couple of quick fire questions. First beer you fell in love with?
Oh, the very first beer I fell in love with, I guess, would have been Adnam Southwold Bitter, or just Bitter as it was called back in the day. Yeah.
Big love for Adnams.
Yeah. That was my sort of formative drink, I suppose. In terms of something, I mentioned Old Malden's Blackadder. That was an eye opener, and Lagunitas IPA, my first keg beer. So those are sort of milestone beers as well. But the beer that I drank more than anything else as a young man was Adnams Bitter. Yeah.
Lovely. My favourite one was Ghost Ship, and what was the other one? They had a pale as well. I can't remember the name. Explorer.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah,
used to love the Explorer.
Yeah.
Most underrated beer style.
I think any beer that you can just happily drink several pints and it's just a beer you want to go back to. And I think that those are the beers that, the beers that get the 5-star ratings on Untapped are, the big IPAs and the Imperial Stouts, and, those are the hype styles. But the ones, the sort of, pale ales, best bitters, those beers that you can just drink 3 or 4 pints of in a session, and, and you just want another one. That's, to me, those are the beers that are underrated.
We just had a mild win champion beer Britain at the GBBF festival yesterday. So yeah,
absolutely. Maybe mild is coming back.
maybe, yeah. And that one was Penzance Brewery, and I had a taste of that last night, and it was very nice, very easy drinking, very very nicely balanced beer.
Yeah.
So Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and learn more about Breed's Cross, and the folk tales in with your beers is absolutely niche, and I think it's a really really nice thing that you're doing there. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on. Like you say, it is it's like what we do in terms of the folktale connection is a little bit different, a little bit unique, but it's great to see how it does really resonate with people, even more so than I probably thought it was going to be perfectly honest. But so it's a great thing.
It's a great thing. So I do want everyone to go and check out Breed's Cross Brewery, and we'll definitely be stocking a few of their beers on the beer rep soon, so keep your eyes out on that on our socials, and if you're signed up to our newsletter, then you'll get the automatic email when we have them in stock. Again, Sean, thanks for coming on the show. Wish you all the best for the future for Breed's Cross, and I wish you a great happy birthday for the end of August as well.
Thanks very much, Martin. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, catch you later. Bye-bye.